Okay, we're going to start with 4 different variations of carries. So first is rack carry. I am big on when you're doing this, go heavy enough where you are challenged to engage certain things. If you go too light, we're kind of just wasting our time walking around the gym. Yeah. So I want him to engage his lat. Let's rotate a little bit this way. So his lat rock hard, and then he has a straight line, knuckles to the ceiling, straight line to his elbow. Obviously, he's engaged in his core as well. Yeah, there it is. Now, as he squeezes this, sometimes people will have these different like ways of engaging the other side. If he doesn't engage this side, he can start to loosen up and lean into this side a little more. So we want to act like we have two. That's a cue I use a lot. Act like you have two, or squeeze the water bottle. Yeah. So if you have like a water bottle in your hand, you're squeezing it the whole time. Anything to add on the rack carry?
Just reinforce so even with this grip, come over and put some weight on the.
Yes.
So just to reinforce the rack position, even with a strong rack position, he can push down strong, right? So again, oh my bad.
Yeah. So he should be able to pack it down as well, right? And then I'll move even back and forth a little bit. He's locked in.
So just reinforcing again, keeping that elbow tight, you can handle a lot of weight, right? And if at all, if like the wrist is an issue, again, there's training aids like wristbands, right? I use wristbands because I like to go heavy and I really like to challenge myself. Okay.
Yeah, you'll get used to it. Where like first month, maybe you feel a little more than later on.
Yeah.
But when in doubt, use wrist guards. I mean, if you're going heavy enough, it is bone on kettlebell there. So. All right, we'll go over overhead.
So overhead position, my big thing, obviously, any type of overhead, the ribs are gonna want to just flare to get in position. So always make sure we're tucking the ribs down and bracing the core, right? So think if you're lying on your back, right? When someone says, "Oh, squeeze your abs, brace your core," right? Like naturally, you're like, "Well, what the hell does that mean? Like, how do I do that?" Right? So I was thinking, if you're lying on your back and someone's about to step on your belly, instinctually you're gonna be like, "Ugh!" Right? And you're gonna brace. So it's the same concept. He's tucking his ribs down and he's gonna tuck his butt under. Okay. Now, the next thing I look at, especially as a prerequisite, one, making sure that he has enough shoulder flexion to be able to cover up his ear visually, right? We don't want to shrug into the movement and have it physically cover the ear. So if he were to turn, you can see space between the shoulder and the ear. Now, one drill I like to do, you can go ahead and put the kettlebell down. One drill I like to do is have someone just go overhead without the kettlebell. And just so they understand, again, that lat needs to support the shoulder, is I'll grab underneath the elbow and I'll pull up without him bending his elbow. He's going to resist by pulling down with his lat, right? So, and I'll be like, hey, do you feel this muscle activating? And usually they'll say yes, right? So a great way to make sure that you're activating through your lat and your shoulders in the right position is to have someone right underneath your elbow pull up on the elbow so then you can pull down against it, right? So if he's elevating the shoulder, right, and shrugging into the movement, I'll have him depress down that shoulder by using his lat. Boom. Okay. So those are the big things when we think about, but also obviously wrist neutral. Again, anytime we see this, right, I always think like, we're serving drinks, right? And usually a lot of those days of doing that are over for us, right? We're not serving tables or anything like that. Okay. So again, we'll have them come sideways. Again, so if I look from the side, shouldn't see excessive rib flare, shouldn't see excessive arching in the hips either. Okay. So again, engaging the core, keeping the ribs tucked. Anything you want to add?
Yeah. So just make sure. I mean, some people have different shoulder ranges, but if you are leaning forward, you're starting to dominate with that mid and front delt. So we really want to get the whole shoulder girdle involved. Rear delt, mid delt, front delt, lat. That's going to be your safest position. I'd rather people go into this position instead of trying to hold it here. So try to make sure, or go lighter, right? Or take breaks. Try not to start getting here to where your elbow's out and your hands inside that elbow position. We want those straight lines here instead of here. Any questions on the overhead carry? I per I personally love either banded or just no weight, just shoulder shrugs. So you just stay overhead. Um, I don't love to do a ton of stretching before strength, but that is something where you can lengthen and then practice packing back in.
Like building off of that, anytime I do a lot of overhead work, I like to attach a band from like the rack. I'll grab a in a seated position, and I'll one depress the shoulder down, but I'll also practice like pulling down into the front rack just to warm the lat up, the coil, right? And we'll get into that with the press as well. So those are some that we like to do to warm up the shoulder and overhead position.
Great question. Okay, next carry. Let's go through our farmer. Yeah, there you go. Usually you want two of the same weights ideally, but you can go a little offset if that's you have two kettlebells that are different at home. So as he gets in position similar to the rack position, I'm gonna have him focus on a good strong chest. I always picture like in Running Man or Total Recall, I forget, Arnold Schwarzenegger walking through the airport. You want to be proud, have a presence. We don't want to be sad, like we're not ready for this flight. Yeah, we want to stay nice and strong. So he's gonna pin his shoulders back a bit. He's not gonna hyperextend. Show them that. We don't want that because that's gonna get extremely fatiguing. So he's gonna stay pretty neutral. He's locked in here. His ribs aren't flaring. So it's very similar to our other carries, but he's just testing the grip a lot here too and testing his traps and obviously engaging his core the whole time. Anything to add on that, TJ?
No.
Nice.
just big thing honestly is just like don't let the arms like go to the side, right?
Yeah, I love that. Try to keep a little separation, right? So like you're in that bodybuilding show trying to flare out the lats a little bit.
Also adds tension. This just basically you're resting along your body.
Mm-hmm.
Right? So we want to make sure that we're keeping the tension on the muscles, right, on the lats, and not letting not cheating the
Time under tension. Okay. Next, last one. Let's see. Goblet, yeah. So again, when he's walking, you can go heavier with this carry. Lots of tension. He's trying to keep his elbows fairly vertical. He's engaging his lats the entire time. Now, say he is walking, anything for carries, we don't want to go too fast. So he's going to pace himself pretty cleanly. If he starts rushing it, he's going to lose tension. Yep. So more tension to the spine than to the muscles that way. He wants to kind of stay structured, control, and not try to outperform the purpose of the movement, right? Let's hear it.
So, in my definition of what is the most functional movement for life, loaded carries, right? Now, like think of like how we carry a bunch of things, right? Think of carrying the groceries up, farmer carry, suitcase carry, right? Going to the airport, obviously we got roller bags now, but think if you're carrying a carry-on, right? New mothers carrying a child, that's a rack carry, right? So we think about things like overhead, if we have to bring something overhead to lift it over, right? So a lot of times it is just isometric time under tension. A lot of it is core, right? That's going to be the ground, like the foundation of it is a lot of core, right? So whether it's a rack carry, suitcase, right? It's just what part are we targeting more, right? Goblet carry, we're thinking just full front, obviously flexion, right? We're thinking lateral carry, we're thinking anti-lateral flexion, right? So a lot of it is just core stability. And a lot of it too, again, lat stability, shoulder stability. But if I think about what a loaded carry like does, it just trains us for like the things that we're going to do in life. Like deadlifting is great, but how often do you deadlift something that's perfectly balanced, right? Never, right? So when I think of like, okay, what actually translates into like everyday living, loaded carries, right? It's the closest thing that we can get to training without actually doing the actual carrying, right?
Yeah, and it helps improve grip overall, like for other movements. So it will lead into other things in the gym as well.
Like a farmer carry is great for adding bone density, right? Without like physically moving. So someone who might come into the gym and say, you know what, my hips and my knees are trashed. I ran a marathon not too long ago. So my hips, my knees are trashed. How can we train and still get benefit without like doing hinges or squats, right? They could be rehabbing from something, right? I just got off of a knee surgery or like a hip surgery. Like, okay, we can stand and hold under tension, right? A lot of it, like, a lot of movements don't have to be done like super difficult, right? A lot of movements can be done isometrically and just holding the tension, right? As long as the muscle is tense, right, it's getting work.
Good.
Would you ever recommend a march over carry, or is a march more just like practicality?
Yeah, I would say marching. It's also good for balance too, right? So having one leg up a little higher, right? You're getting a little bit more balance, which again is going to work your core in a different way. It's a different stimulus, right? So if you're looking for a different stimulus, doing a march or even a marching walk, right, is another way to do
So it shouldn't be done like
it.
this.
No.
No high knees.
Really want them slow.
It's again structured, again the time under tension. The more you do something like that, you're taking tension off and then only adding like difficulty to add difficulty, which can lead to injury. Unnecessary tension.
All right. Turkish get up.
The Turkish get up.
So I'll lead off with, I'll give it to TJ after this, but I like the Turkish get up. I do. I think it has its benefits. I think it takes too long to throw into a class. I think it can be a little time consuming because the way I learned it, and I think TJ has too, is there's 14 to 16 steps. We're going to kind of shorten that a little bit, but it does have its benefits. You can break it up. So we'll show you like a shortened version and then a long version, and then try to get through this pretty quickly here.
Okay, so we start always, always, always in a fetal position, right? You always roll into now. Now, if like I always say, we start in a fetal position because like when we want to roll into a good foundational movement. Now, whatever hand has there you go. Whatever hand has the weight, that's going to be the arm that's bent, and then the other side is going to be like 45 degrees, right? I always like to think, make sure it's nice and wide for surface area so it's more balance. Okay. Now, again, strong wrist. The first step, and this is one of 3 things that I like to do. First step is to push and activate the hip across. Okay. So he's going to push the hip, right? He's going to dig his elbow in, and then he's going to use his obliques to then sit up into the elbow. Okay. So pushing the hips across, digging through the elbow, and crunching the abs. So he's going to get into from the elbow, then straight into the hand. He's just going to push platform off his hand and position it kind of close to where his cheek would be, his lower cheek. Okay. Now, there's a couple ways that we can do this. The easiest way is to bend this knee in. Okay, now what I'm going to have him do is he's going to bridge through his planted foot and he's going to swing this knee back in line with his hand. So if I look from the side, foot, knee, hand, straight line. Okay. From here, he's going to shift into his hips, position his center of gravity more underneath the bell, and then he's going to not push off of his hand, but drive his hips underneath. Okay. Now, there's a couple ways that he can do this, right? He can either windshield wiper his foot out in front, or he could step open forward. Okay. Just depends on if you have like pants or leggings on, the type of surface. The windshield wiper can kind of chew the knee up, right? Now, right here, he's going to Valsalva maneuver, and he's going to step up off of that front leg into overhead position. The same leg that steps up is going to be the same leg that steps back. Okay, now he's got the option to windshield wiper or to step open. So he steps open. Now, big thing here, you guys can't see it, but he's taking his free hand, he's finding his thigh, and he's tracing it down to the floor as he pushes his hips back towards the heel. Okay, now from here, he's going to push through that stable foot, and he's going to sweep his leg through. And he's going to extend it long. Now, here's where people have good control, or people are just going to like fall back. He's going to go to his elbow. So go to your elbow, the right elbow. Yep. Now, instead of just falling straight back, imagine he's got 100 pounds in his hand, right? He can't just fall back onto his shoulder, right? That's going to knock the wind out of him. Kettlebell could fall down, and the dentist would be very happy to see him, okay? Now, what he's going to do is he's going to push the hip over, so push through the hip over, and he's going to fall straight back and then roll back to his shoulder. Then from there, gets back into the fetal position, okay? Now, there's a lot of small nuances to the movement, right? So why don't you hop up, and I want to break down. I want to break down more of because the hardest part of the Turkish get up, and the one that is going to be telling if they can even do the weight or not, right? So let's just say I start in the fetal position here. I'm going to right hand side. I'm going to roll. Now, when I was saying there's 3 parts to this movement, right? First one is the hip drive. So I want to push my hip over, right? I want to dig my elbow into the ground, and I want to utilize my obliques to then sit up. So morph all those together, and you have your sit up, right? One common thing that I see a lot is people will counterbalance their leg on the sit up. They'll go here, and they'll do that, right? What I tend to say, one, the weight might be a little heavy, right? And 2, they're not giving their leg something to do, right? So what I like to do is I like to give them a target and say, try and reach and touch that belt, right? So think shooting your leg long instead of picking it up, right? Here, push the hip across, drive up to the elbow. Now, I always want to stay strong through the shoulder. I'll push myself up. Now, we did the knee bench, right? At the end of the day, if we're trying to do a Turkish get up, make it easy for yourself, bend the knee, right? A lot of people also like to bridge, and then they'll swing the leg back underneath. A lot of times people will do this, not a strong position. Make sure that knee, hand, and foot are in a straight line. Now, positioning your hips back underneath the weight to then push your hips through. Now, this is where you could step forward, okay? Now, the whole time I'm doing that until about this position, my eyes are on that kettlebell, right? Once I'm here, I can kind of take it off. Valsalva maneuver, step up, same leg steps back. Now, windshield wiper or step open, find the thigh. Because now my eyes are here, right? I have no idea where I'm going. A lot of times people do this. Ooh, if the weight's heavy, you're going down, and not in a good way, right? Here, find the thigh, hips back. I like to walk this foot out, or walk the hand out into a strong position before I shift the weight onto the hand. Now, from here, I'll then kick my leg through wide. Elbow, I'll push the hip across. I'll lie straight back, and then I'll roll to my shoulder, right? Because here's what it looks like if you just try to go down. It looks like this, right? So imagine a lot of weight in your hand doing that, not fun. And especially, like, you know that person is just basically like, I'm trying to get down, right? They don't have control over the weight.
Yeah, and it makes a great point. I was going to mention that. Looking at it the whole time. Think about like when you're riding your bike. If you start looking to your left, you start viewing to your left a little bit, right? So if you're looking down and you have this overhead and you're trying to do all this stuff, it's going to start coming forward, and then that front delt starts to get weakened, and you're going to give up, and it's going to collapse on you.
Another thing too is keep the kettlebell to the side, right? Don't have it be here. So as I go through this movement here, I'm always keeping my eyes on the kettlebell. Once I'm here, I can then step up. Now when I step back, I'm gonna look back at the kettlebell.
It goes back to neutral.
And one of the reasons why I find the thigh, because again, I don't know where it is if I'm just here, right? Find the thigh. Now I know I'm in a straight line if I just walk my hand out, right? Then I shift the weight to the hand, kick the leg through, elbow, across, roll back, and down.
All right. Everyone's doing 20 of these right now. And that's a great breakdown, obviously. We could get into more little nuances, but I would say that's a great breakdown for 10 minutes right there. Any questions on the TGU?
A great way to practice too is use your shoe, right? Use your shoe. If you can do a Turkish get up with your shoe, that's how you know you're stable and you're ready to do weights. Ready to weight it up. Turkish get up's a fun lift. You can do a lot of weight with it. It's a great movement, especially if like you want to have a strong foundation to get up off the floor, right? So I used to do this with a lot of my older clients, right? That would be like, well, if I fall and I go down, right, what's a good way to get up, right?
It's very true.
Not joking, right? We all know as we age, right, if you take a bad fall and you're on the ground, you know, you get stuck there, and next thing you know, you're life alert, and not good. Not good. Yeah, the arm is going to be locked out the entire time. Is there another movement on there? Or?
No. Or kettlebell halo. Let's just go through that real quick. If you want to go over how it's a nice modification to like a
so like think about what makes a steel mace 360 hard is the length of the lever, right? What's great about this is very small lever. So now everything is still the same. We're going to start by tilting and clearing that window with the elbow, right? As we bring the kettlebell back around, one thing that is great with is look at the elbows and look at the hand positioning, right? We always say you want your hands behind your head, one, because you're getting maximal stretch on the tricep, right? If we know anything about range of motion, the bottom third of the range of motion is going to be most beneficial for hypertrophy, right? Or time under tension, right? Now, again, so this would technically be an overhead position. So he's thinking about his core, right? He's not letting his ribs flare. Now, as he brings it around, he has to pull the weight back down in front of him, right? So as he comes around, it's called a halo, but it's more like an orbit, right? Because we don't want like you guys doing more orbits the head, right?
Just think about it like depth in a squat. So you want to get low so you have more reflex option, you get more growth. Same thing here. You stop here, you're going to feel your elbows more than anything. You get deeper, it goes into your lats, your triceps, you get that full range to come back strong with the full motion.
Yeah. And any movement where you can get more range of motion is going to be more beneficial.
Yeah, so we don't want to start up here either. We want to lengthen out a little bit. Just like the steel mace, if we start here, it becomes this very choppy movement. So this is a good modification to practice steel mace 360. If you guys ever want to try that out. Which, let's do right now. We'll try those three. Don't have to try the Turkish get up. I know it's going to be a long thing. So you could try the positions of holding the kettlebell position, carries, or you could try the kettlebell halo. We'll just do like 3-4 minutes.